So moving on, our last company for today's webinar is Godolphin Resources Limited, and Godolphin's ASX code is GRL. It has a market cap of approximately 6 million. Godolphin Resources operates a number of gold and copper projects in the Lachlan Fold Belt of New South Wales. We welcome Company Managing Director, Jeneta Owens. Jeneta, welcome and please take it away.
Thanks, Manny. We'll move on to the next slide to start off with. So this is the usual disclaimer. It's available on our website if you'd like to have a read through that one. Next slide. Okay, so just talking about, who are Godolphin, what are the investment highlights, what do we see as important? And Godolphin Resources are an exploration company. We are primarily based in New South Wales, but we do have tenements most recently this year that we've got in Queensland. And, we're trying to push forward with our strategic focus on critical minerals and future-facing metals that's going to, I guess, underpin, future technologies. So when we're thinking about that, we've got a multi-discovery strategy whereby we work on many different project types at the one time. So we've got a copper and gold portfolio in probably some of the best terrain for these types of projects or porphyry style mineralisation in the country in the Lachlan Fold Belt, along with complementary rare earth portfolio. Now, we do work across both of those streams at the same time, and we might be drilling at our copper and gold portfolio, one of the projects there, but we'll also be doing background work on our rare earth projects as well. We've got a locally based team. We are all here in Orange in New South Wales, which is where most of our ground is, and our team are all situated here too. So they've worked in local operations in this area, so they understand what we're actually looking for, what the end game is, and that gives them a real insight into exploring in this area. So let's just move on to the next slide if we could. Bit of just a corporate snapshot. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but like Matthew just said before, it's difficult times. Our share price is not where it is, so our market cap is a bit lower than what we would like. We do have a bit of money from a recent raise that we did that was oversubscribed a little bit there in September. And I guess of note is during that time, we actually had American Rare Earths come in on as our number one shareholder. Now, that really does provide validity to us that they saw the value of our rare earth project, and we welcome that with open arms. Next slide, please. Now, I mentioned that we've got a large portion of ground here in the Lachlan Fold Belt, so we're surrounded by very large mines that have been operating for a long time. So Cadia, copper gold, North Parkes copper gold, Tamingli gold, the recent Boda, which is a very large discovery by Alkane of a porphyry copper style, and also the Dubbo Zirconia project, or that sort of has been known locally for a long time, but Australian Strategic Materials, their rare earth project there near Dubbo. Now, that is only 7 kilometres away from our tenement boundary, which was one of the reasons when the market is depressed, and we are explorers, but fundamentally our job is to provide value for shareholders, and we have to think about how we can do that. The board of Godolphin is very open to ideas and suggestions and new opportunities. So with that project being 7 kilometres from our tenement boundary, we have the same rocks, we're in the same terrains. It just made sense for us to look within our own tenement package to see if there was any opportunities there. And unfortunately, we didn't have that. But what it did do is open up our thoughts around where else we might be able to find rare earths in the Lachlan Fold Belt, and that pointed us to the area down there at Narrabri, where we've started a joint venture with a private company there on a known rare earth project. So there were only 2 rare earth projects in New South Wales that have been identified through many government publications, and Narrabri was one of them, and the Dubbo project was the other. Next slide, please. So after doing that joint earning agreement and signing those documents just 18 months ago now, we've made significant progress, but not just on the rare earth project side of things. We have been moving forward the copper and gold projects as well. So you can see the timeline. We've done a lot. So we've been drilling at Yeovil, at some of our copper focused projects, as well as doing diamond drilling on the rare earth project. Now, the diamond drilling, is unusual to be undertaken from generally clay-hosted rare earth projects are drilled with air core, which is much cheaper. But with the weather conditions in the eastern part of Australia, very, very wet, and parts of the project are actually underwater. So for us to be able to push forward, we thought, well, we know that there was an old 2004 JORC resource done on the project. So we know that there was rare earths there. So what we wanted to do was think about how we could speed up the process of understanding how much, but what it may mean from a processing perspective. So we worked with our contractor, came up with some novel ways of getting around with all the water, so different equipment, and we're able to drill in total 31 diamond drill holes. So that enabled us to update our resource there, and you can see there that we put that out in April this year, which ultimately we set it on a number of 94.9 million tonnes at the 739 ppm TREO, and that does have that higher grade component of 20 million tonnes at over 1,000 ppm. But we also sent some samples from the original 4 cores that we drilled for metallurgy test work, and this was really an important thing for Godolphin because we needed to understand whether or not this project could leach, because it's important for clay deposits that they're leachable. And I guess, for thinking about rare earth projects, we have hard rock style and we have clay style. And the hard rock means that the rare earths are encapsulated inside other crystals, so other minerals. So they're inside and they have to be cracked open, which is a very expensive process to be able to do that. Whereas clay hosted, generally the rare earths are either adsorbed onto the outside of clay particles, or they might be inside them, but not in the same way as what they would be inside of another type of hard rock mineral. So whether they can be leached or not is very important. So we sent off only a number of samples, and there were individual 1 metre samples, just to determine that baseline, can it be leached or not. And you can see, we got 92% recovery of the key magnet minerals, and that's the ND, PR, TB and DY, and they're really important for that future technology areas, and that was very encouraging. So we have started a phase 2 on that program. You can also see that I mentioned moving forward with the copper side of the business. So we have drilled 2 diamond holes recently at Goodrich. Some interesting results there. We actually got 8 metres at over 1% copper, which is amazing. That was in a lower grade halo, which has been amazing and really exciting. But what it's also done is given us some more insights to that project, and we're going to use that to target future drilling in that area. So if we could move along the slide there, thank you. I have spoken about what rare earths are generally used for, and you can see here the specific ones that we're talking about. So when people talk about rare earths, it's 15 different elements on the periodic table, and some of them have very little value, if any, and others are very valuable. So what we're focusing on are the ones that are quite valuable and are used in a lot of this new technology. But it's not even new technology, a lot of it's old technology that we already currently use. So things like fibre optics and medical imaging, all of those things are going to increase over time. And as new technologies are developed, these kind of materials will be highly sought after. Now, rare earths are really, the reason why they're sought after is because they actually have a very high melting point. So they, when you alloy them with steel products, they actually make the steel, it can withhandle higher temperatures before it starts to melt. So that's really important in a lot of industries, and defence is one of those. Next slide, please. So this is just a bit more of an overview of the maiden resource that we put out in April this year at Narrabri. And you can see that from that 2004 resource, we actually, with our initial maiden drill program, we had, huge success. So we're looking there at 120% uplift in the TREO grade. So that's, that 739 ppm that I was talking about. 50% of the resource is now indicated, which is a really important step, because you can't start a mining study and start to put numbers around what the value of this might be until you get to that point. And then again, we've got a 30% increase in the tonnage from that old resource as well. And, this is our first go at drilling. It's not actually closed off. There's parts of it that are open at depth. It's open, in several directions. So there's a lot of upside for future drilling in this area to make this resource bigger. And, at this point in time, it may be not the most important thing to make it bigger. If we're talking about a clay deposit, they generally, when we think about processing and how much we would process, quite often it's around about a 5 million tonne per annum kind of project. So if you look at our 94.9 million tonnes, we've got, in our first round of drilling, we've sort of secured a number of years, so, of mining already. Now, we have been working with ANSTO all of this time with our metallurgy programs, and we have now got our phase 2 program in with those guys, and they're working on that within their project stream. That's going to involve other leach testing so we can understand the variability across the deposit. We're also doing compositing samples, so not individual samples. So we did get that 92% recovery, but now we're doing the composite, so it's more like a mining style. It'd be more likely what we're going to put into be leached. Not just 1 metre interval, so what we would potentially mine. So we aren't expecting to get 92% recovery again. There will be some kind of dilution there. It'd be great if we did, but we just, aren't expecting that. And we are doing size fraction analysis. So quite often, again, with these styles of clay deposits, you'll find that you might be able to upgrade your ore before it even goes to be leaching by, putting it through a screen, as the rare earths will be within a specific size fraction. Next slide, please. Now, I mentioned that we Godolphin work by having a portfolio of projects, and earning into the Narrabri project sort of did leave us a bit exposed from that perspective. We only had one rare earth project. So we have spent the last few months building our rare earth portfolio. So that includes Bingra in northern New South Wales, Isval in Queensland, and the tenement directly adjacent to Narrabri, Cambrai down there in the Temora district. Now, this really does, this tenement is probably our most exciting, because it has an A-type granite of the Narrabri suite, which is, what the source of the rare earths are at Narrabri. So we're really keen to get on the ground and test that for its, rare earth prospectivity. But also it allows us, for when we do get into that mining phase, we've got area that we can use for development or putting infrastructure, mills and things like that. So, we were very excited when we picked up that tenement. But also it's got some other prospectivity that's also important on this same journey. So there is an old tin mine in the north of the tenement. There's a lot of granites in this area, all of different styles. So the tin mine had associated copper, and these are known worldwide to be quite rich tin copper deposits associated with granite. So that's something that we're definitely going to be investigating as well. Next slide, please. So just moving on to the copper and gold portfolio. Now, I've mentioned Yeovil a little bit because we have been actively drilling there over the last couple of months. So we started off with 2 diamond holes at Goodrich, which we got those good results. We've now moved on to be looking at Cyclops and Yeovil East. But also in our portfolio, we still hold Lewis Ponds, which I believe is one of the most amazing gold resources, sitting here in New South Wales that hasn't had a lot of attention. And, it's a similar kind of thing. We've got some money in the bank. We've got great projects, and we need to be able to use those funds to get the most that we can at the time. So Lewis Ponds is sitting at 6.2 million tonnes at 2 grams per tonne gold, 80 grams silver. And, when you do the numbers on that, it's quite amazing. There's over $1 billion worth of gold sitting in the ground at Lewis Ponds, and it's got exploration potential. It's got holes within the resource where there's no drilling. It's we haven't found the bottom, we haven't found the extents, and this is a really great gold project. But we in the same kind of boat, I guess is what Andrew sort of mentioned. We probably need to have someone, a partner coming on board and help us financially to get this project up and running and into mining. So that's something that we obviously, are looking for. Next slide, please. So moving into Yeovil in a bit more detail, the core there that you can see at the bottom, that's massive chalcopyrite and magnetite, and that was drilled at Cyclops last year. So we have designed a program of work there to follow up on this high-grade mineralisation. So Yeovil itself, the existing mineral resource is sitting at 12.8 million tonnes at 0.38 copper and 0.14 gold. And when you add all of those things up and apply a gold equivalent number, and I'm not sure how many of you in the audience are familiar with the Boda deposit, they use a gold equivalent because Alkane is a gold company. If we apply that same criteria to this project, those numbers, we're actually higher grade. So we come at about 0.8 gold equivalent, where they're sitting at about 0.5. So we do have that potential to have that higher grade flavour. And I mentioned before, Goodrich, we had 8 metres at over 1% copper. There is potential to find some of these really higher grade zones within this project area. And Yeovil's amazing. It's got 20 kilometres of strike length of known copper workings and from the old timers and different explorers where they've picked up copper at surface. And, that's got to come from somewhere. So really our job and what we're trying to focus on is where we can find locations where we can get a whole bunch of this stuff that's, maybe fallen into a dilational zone or something like that. So we've done, surface magnetics. We've done some drilling, which is, it's actually been quite successful in providing vectors to where, more ore might be, which is what we do try and aim for as well. And, getting high grade copper in your drill holes is always fun. So we do like that. Now, again, with all of the known projects that are actually mining in New South Wales, they're all not just one mine. So they're generally multiple mines in close locations. So, for example, North Park has the E27, E22, E48, E26, and GRP 314. So that's 5 different mines, all within a couple of kilometres radius. Cadia is exactly the same. So they had Ridgeway, they had Big Cadia, they had Cadia Hill, they've got Cadia East, to name again another 4 or 5. So, that's the kind of model we're going with here is, trying to find these different pockets of mineralisation or different zones in one location, and we think that we're on the right track. Next slide, please. So this is our drill rig that's been out actually drilling Cyclops at the moment. So we've got a 2,000 metre RC program there, and then we're moving on to Yeovil East, and that's currently in progress. So I will leave our presentation there.
Jeneta, thank you for that.
I saw you click up there, Manny, so I thought my time must have been up.
Okay. Look, I mean, it looks like you've obviously got 2 good projects, both more than one on each, but copper gold on the one side, you've got rare earths on the other. It begs a question, and you did touch on it a little bit during the presentation. Do you think these commodities fit together in one company? And if not, how do you see that evolving? Because there are some questions that have come through along those lines, sort of asking the question, should these 2 commodities be together in the one vehicle?
Yeah, look, and, from when we look at it from a purely geological process, copper and gold and rare earths are all just elements on the periodic table. In the early phases, we explore for them in the same way. Even when we're doing mining studies, we actually take the same steps. So they are just metals and elements that we would, progress in the exploration through studies into mining in the same way. The difference, I think, is really the way we think about rare earth elements. And, and for a lot of people, it's quite confusing and it's a bit of a black box. It's new for Australia. And I think that's the biggest key, is that we don't understand rare earth elements and how they're processed like we do copper and gold. Copper or gold's probably a good example. There's more than one way to process gold, but we're all comfortable with those ways. And it's the same as rare earth elements. When we look at places like Lynas or even what Iluka are doing, they're processing and they're cracking minerals to get rare earths out of them. That's one way. And the other way is if you've got the right type of project, which is the clays, that you can leach them. And again, that's just, the process of mining. Whether or not they, can stay in the same company, that's a hard question to answer, because ultimately, we're an exploration company. So, maybe none of our projects will stay with us. A project is only as good as its lifespan. So it may be that, Godolphin becomes a rare earth mining company, or it may be that, we actually do, IP, they owe that out or sell it or something else. But ultimately, I guess at this point in time, it's just being worked as another, mineral project.
All right, understood. Another question that came through was with regards to American rare earths. And the question was, what is the significance and the reasoning behind American rare earths taking a 13% strategic position in Godolphin? And, are we thinking in terms of future synergies? What is that? How should we read that?
Yeah, so their communication to us is that they see us as a very undervalued company. They see the value in our projects, so the work that we've done, the progress that we've made, and they basically see us as a great investment at the price point that we are at the moment. But let's not, pretend that that's the only reason. They are a rare earth company as well. They've got involved with us. I can only imagine that there would be some synergies in the future that they would be thinking of, but that's not their primary purpose right now. It is just as an investment.
Okay, understood. And just to wrap it up, I mean, a little question around the balance sheet. You mentioned you recently raised some equity. You're comfortable the balance sheet's in good shape. It's in a, it has a flexibility to fund your plans going forward, certainly over the next 12 months. Is that the case?
Well, yes and no. Ultimately, that the funds that we raised, we're obviously putting it towards this drilling that we're doing at the moment and the metallurgy that we're doing at Narrabri. But these types of projects, it's expensive work. So if we want to keep going at the pace that we've been going at, it's not going to last that long. So we have to make some very, clear strategic decisions about how we finance the projects moving forward.
And I imagine that would include potential partners.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. All right, Jeneta. Well, thank you for your time today. That was great, and have a great weekend out at Orange.
I will do. And
right,
thank you to everyone for listening in.